Finally, 8 years in the making. That victory was 8 years. I'm so over the moon. So over the moon. We needed that. Desperately, desperately needed that, especially off those draws against Fulham and Spurs. But if you think about it in the context of the season as a whole, last year, beaten Manchester City at the Emirates, we would have won the league because that would have been 3 less points for them, 3 more points for us. They finished 5 points ahead of us. You can do the maths. We would have won the league. To get over that hurdle of finally getting a result against the champions, it's a massive, massive 3 points, and you cannot underplay the significance of that. But look, I want to break this video down. I'm going to do a longer match reaction today because there were a few really iffy moments. Obviously, and what we'll start with is Kovacic is the luckiest man, the luckiest footballer on the planet today. The first one, it's questionable that it should have been a direct red. VAR, I can understand the way they look at it. It's not so far up his ankle that it's definitely a red. It's definitely a yellow, so I'm very glad that they got that spot on. He could have walked first time. Maybe if you will argue he should. I don't really have an opinion on the first one. I'm glad it's a yellow card. The fact they reviewed it on VAR, again, I think it's a good thing. It shows that VAR is working in the way it sets the rules. The second one, though, is an absolute farce. How he can go... It's basically the exact same challenge on Declan Rice. It's just the referee standing at a different angle, so he claims he can't see it. When Rice goes down, you can see Kovacic has gone in studs up. I don't care where you're standing on the pitch. The fact that he didn't get sent off and Oliver, blatantly waves it on as in, no yellow card, play on, blah, blah, blah. That should lead to a suspension for Oliver. I'm sorry. The Liverpool Spurs officials, they've been indefinitely suspended, one of them, so he will never referee a Premier League game again. Michael Oliver's going to referee international games, most likely, during the break. He's then going to come back and most likely he'll probably referee Chelsea versus Arsenal at Stamford Bridge as the first game back. And again, it shouldn't happen. It's an absolute joke. But the problem is that Arsenal probably won't get an apology. We won't get the audio released by the PGMOL because Arsenal ended up winning the game. And that's wrong, in my opinion. I think even though Arsenal got the 3 points, and yes, we're all absolutely elated to have finally beaten Man City, our main title competitors, along with Spurs, look, there still needs to be calls and clamours for the PGML to take accountability because it was still an absolute disgrace what happened. 2 weekends in a row, a stain has been put on the Premier League twice by the same corporation, and something really needs to be done about it. I think people need to start calling for Howard Webb's head because I don't know what he's running in that operation because he says he wants to be cleaner on it. He says he wants to be more direct, get decisions right. He's had 2 howlers in a row and nothing's really changed. So something needs to happen about that. But we'll move away from the negatives because ultimately this is a huge 3 points for Arsenal. It's one that's been coming for so long now. I thought the game itself was a massively lethargic game. Both sides didn't really look at it. You could see both sides have massive injuries. Obviously, City, they're missing De Bruyne and Rodri. Arsenal, Saka hasn't trained at all. We've now learned after the game, so he won't be playing for England. Hasn't trained at all. Martinelli was on the bench. And you're thinking to yourself, look, you've just got to make do with what you can. City, I thought, very poor in the first half. In fact, they didn't take their chances. We were worse by far. I think Ramsdale has to come back into the side. Raya was appalling today. I really did think his distribution, it got much better in the second half, but the first half we were very lucky not to be 3-0 down. It was just how poor City's finishing was. So in that regard, yeah, Ramsdale has to come back in. I'm glad Martinelli's going to be back. Hopefully Saka recovers over this international break and we can have him back for Chelsea away because I think that's going to be a massive game, especially how Chelsea are playing now. But you look at it and you think first half 0-0, probably a fair reflection on the game. Second half I thought we were much better. Martinelli coming on was just a massive injection of pace and energy into the team. The crowd got behind the team and I thought they'd been very flat in the first half. And Havertz, I have to say, I thought he was a game changer because he bought something that Nketiah didn't, and that's one thing that I want to criticise Arteta on. He needs to stop backing Nketiah. I'm sorry, I like him. I think he's a good player to bring on from the bench, but he cannot start games. Martinelli or Havertz should have started instead of him, and you play Jesus through the middle. You do not play Jesus on the wing because that's the 5th game in a row now where it hasn't worked out. So something's got to give in that department. But apart from that, second half, brilliant. And if we look at it, the 3 points, they're huge. Not only does that mean City now sit 2 points behind, which we know isn't that huge in the Premier League because anyone can slip up that easily. But mentally and just getting over that barrier for Arsenal. I think obviously hadn't beaten them in 8 years. They've lost 12 consecutive games to Manchester City. To finally get over that hoodoo is absolutely massive mentally. And when you think last season, that was the real block on what we lost the league on. If you'd beaten Manchester City just once, you would have won the league. To go and do it the first time around this season, it's huge. It's absolutely huge. For City, again, I don't think they'll be panicking too much. It is the first time they've lost 2 Premier League games in a row for 5 years. But again, I don't think they'll be panicking too much because they are still Man City. They are still the juggernaut that we all know. And I'm sure they'll be right back at it. But for Arsenal, it's massive to be top of the league, still unbeaten, let's not forget. The only 2 unbeaten sides in the competition left are Arsenal and Spurs. That is massive, and I don't think anyone expected that coming into the season. So that is going to be huge. Spurs, they've got some very tough fixtures coming up. They've only really had Liverpool so far, and obviously Man United, but they dispersed them easily. They've got to go to Chelsea, they've got to go to Man City coming up, and that's going to be really hard for them. So we'll have to see how they deal with that. But again, for Arsenal, it's great. We've just got to go to Stamford Bridge now, get the 3 points, which I know we can do. If we play with our full strength team, we play like I know we can. Chelsea, they've been playing well recently, but I still think they're no match for us if we're on our form. But yeah, just finally, so grateful. Massive 3 points, and yeah, move on to the international break.